Hello, this is Lisa LeRose here on Connect to Love on PRN-FM, and I am joined by the amazing Michael J. Russ. I want to welcome you, Michael. Every week you inspire me and you just amaze me with all the synchronicities that you bring into my life. So I want to say thank you and welcome you today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to be with you again here. This never gets old. This is always something that energizes the heck out of me. And I just, we both are driven, guided to various informations that can help in our own lives and our own mission and purpose. And I'm looking forward to today's conversation because hopefully it will resonate with our listeners in a way that helps move them forward as well. That's the whole idea here. We want to move you forward. Mm-hmm. So thank you. I'm happy about this. Yeah. I'm happy. Let's go.
Yeah. So I read a lot, and one of I love the teachings of some of the old masters. But there was a gentleman, his name was Patanjali, and he was a Hindu master in the second century. And he had said, when you are inspired by some great purpose, some extraordinary project, all your thoughts break their bonds. Your mind transcends limitations, your consciousness expands in every direction, and you find yourself in a new, great, and wonderful world. Dormant forces, faculties, and talents become alive, and you discover yourself to be a greater person by far than you ever dreamed yourself to be. And I absolutely love that quote because, Michael, you and I have been talking about that. How do we move? How do we become a greater person than we ever dreamed ourselves to be? How do we move from this 3D, illusionary reality into a 5-dimensional, multi-sensory being where we're connected? And so I'm going to kick it off, and I just would love to hear where you want to take this conversation today because there's just so much to unpack, I guess.
Thank you. I will simply say let's just kind of create a point of reference here. Pam Gregory, the astrologer, English astrologer, came out with her, as you know, we've been talking about her 2023 predictions and her readings, her interpretation of the astrology for 2023. And I'm going to simply tell you right up front that I'm not really big into astrology. What I listen for when I hear her is the grand themes, so to speak. The themes is what I really pay attention to. What the stars and astrological signs and all that, and the planets and everything, what they are telling her about the themes for this year. And the themes that I gleaned from her YouTube video that talking about 2023's themes is personal evolution, that this is a year that we will begin to discover our unique essence, our role in this universe, so our role in this life, in the massive evolution of humanity, so to speak. That we are coming into a new phase that should run the next 12 years, a phase that is giving each of us the opportunity to begin to and take the reins of our own reality. And in my own podcast, my podcast was originally called Beyond the 3D. It has since evolved into Life Moves. However, it's all about how you mitigate the 3D world, the illusionary world, as you just alluded to, because it is an illusion. And it helps to see everything that goes on around us that we think is important. It helps us in dealing with it to see it as an opportunity for us to respond with love, kindness, forgiveness, and gratitude. Big emphasis on love. That it's not real from the perspective of it has any serious consequence. It's unique and individualistic in its unfolding. However, we find ourselves with the massive amount of information that we're exposed to every single day, we find, and the amount of frequencies that we're bombarded by, most of them negative, it's very easy to become wrapped up in the 3D world and thinking it's real. Yet, I I always have to remember, tomorrow's another day. This is just today. And tomorrow there'll be something different. And I know for myself, what I have been doing very masterfully is being able to, what I've been doing is taking and rising above it, transmuting this whole thing, just rising above it and letting it go by, and understanding that what's happening out there to people is happening to those people for a reason, and that I don't have to commit any judgment, time, energy, emotional capital to whatever's happening. I can just see it as it unfolding. It means something to someone, but it doesn't have to mean anything to me. I think you know what I'm talking about. It doesn't have to be something that I need to respond to. The desire to respond to every little thing, judge every little thing, to become wrapped up emotionally in every little thing when it has nothing to do with our own personal evolution, other than giving us the opportunity to experience it and let it go. If there's something we can learn from it, of course, fine, great. Take that. That's the positive, the takeaway. Then you simply have to let it go. As I said, I think last week or the week before, your life would be absolutely amazing if you forgot what happened yesterday, because whatever's happening today is unfolding and it'll continue to unfold. So I loved one of the things, great takeaways from her 2023 theme video was that astrologically is that this is an opportunity. There's a lot of people this year that are going to wake up and recognize that they are in control of their reality, that they can control their input and their interaction with the 3D world around them in a way that helps them, that elevates them and helps them remain happy. And a big, huge theme on love. The communities will be expanding into a much more loving and peaceful world. I find that very, very inspiring. That, and I want to know what you want to. She mentions this a couple of times. She's mentioned it in the past. It's the words "New Earth," and I want to know what that means to you. What does New Earth mean to you? I know you've heard it before. Is this the loving, community-based, peaceful world that we are, that we have the ability to consciously evolve into?
You know what, Michael, I do believe that, in my opinion, that's what it is. It's interesting because Eckhart Tolle had written a book entitled The New Earth, and I have not read it. I don't know why there is, I just, even to listen to it on audio, it's nothing that I've been able to do. And perhaps it's because my guides or my higher soul purpose is wanting to just, for me to determine what that is for myself. And for me, it's about oneness, and it's about connection. Many years ago, I really did. I have a vision of heaven being on earth. We hear that all the time. If there could be heaven on earth, and what would that look like for you? For me, it is that connection. It's that love. It's that feeling. It's knowing that you have this support system. And I think that's part of what Pam is alluding to. You know, she talks about this year being a time of transition, that it actually being a turning point for humanity. And what I love about her is she doesn't make astrology so far out of reach that you can't comprehend the major concepts of what she's trying to say. And the planets, the way that they are aligning, and she goes back into history of all of these different points in time when we were at the same precipice of change and the different things that evolve. So the things that are aligning right now are very similar to when the United States wrote the Declaration of Independence in 1776. So you think about all of the different things that were unfolding. And at that time, it was,
right.
What do you want to create? They had an opportunity, a clean slate with the country. They knew what they didn't like, but what did they want? What did they want to create? And I think that's really what it is for yourself. And Pam speaks about that. She says, in finding the hero within yourself. And what does that mean? And I think it's going back to even what Patanjali said. It's what is your greater purpose? And when you find that and you transcend whatever the limitations are of what the illusion, and you think about that was like the second century. They didn't have cell phones. They didn't have all these other limitations, but they had other different things that would be perceived barriers, right? So if we have an opportunity with a new beginning, and I think that that's really what, to answer your question to me, that's what this new earth is all about, that there will be a space where there will be a higher consciousness where people will actually tune into and connect with other people's hearts. And really, you go back to love. What would love do? What would love do? And you ask yourself that over and over again. And so many of the mystics, the teachers that I have read over the years, have always said the same thing. It's the most powerful force in the universe. So if you continually want to question, am I doing the right thing? Well, you ask yourself, what would love do? And then do that. And so it's not that you're not without challenges. And I think that she actually uses a term which I absolutely love. She said that we are the pioneers of the new earth, or the ground crew. And you think about, okay, we don't have covered wagons, but we're delving into something new. And I see a lot of different areas where there's coming back to community gardens, bringing back more of a cohesive, smaller community feel. And I'd love to hear your thoughts, Michael. So to you, when you hear that term, New Earth, what does that mean to you?
New Earth, of course, let me just first acknowledge the fact that I love your description of what it means to you. It's very powerful. And
thank you.
I am very much on the same page that we have to really discover what it means to us, each of us individually, because it is an individual thing. And where I'm going with this is, we as individuals, when we decide what it means to us, then that helps shape the whole. It helps shape the consciousness of this planet. And if we decide that to us it's love, it's kindness, it's forgiveness, it's empathy, gratitude, if it's all of that, then that is those are the frequencies we're going to put out and that's what's going to reshape this world and reshape the 3D institutions that have been literally at the feeding trough of our existence, taking advantage, creating the divisiveness, the divide between rich and poor. Greed has been such a theme in the last 3 decades. Mainly in the last 2 decades, greed has been taking over. I go on YouTube. It's really interesting. I go on YouTube to see these videos like with Pamela and to listen to Brian Scott. And I don't know if you've noticed this. However, the number of ads that come on before the videos that are about making money, becoming a millionaire, making 6 figures as a coach, life coach. It's all of these things that are pushing this greed button for everybody. And the challenge that I see is in just letting them go by. They don't really, do they apply to us, to our better nature? They push that button, that greed button, which in my view is a lower frequency. Greed to me is a lower frequency because it's driving its essence is something negative, like you have to take advantage of someone in order to live a better life, and that is not what we need to do. Simply put, one of the other things that Pam Gregory talked about was discovering who you are, to helping to using this year to discover what it is, to discover your gifts and your talents, or rediscover, as it were, to reconnect with them, because reconnecting with them it creates a foundation for you loving yourself, self-acceptance, self-love, confidence, greater confidence, because you're actually participating in something that is innate to you and who you are as an individual. This is the thing about this whole greed button pushing thing. It doesn't necessarily play to or speak to what you're good at. It literally is all about money and wealth and power. Okay? So what is it that, and we all know the term, if you do what you love, you'll be happy the rest of your life, and if you do what you love, you'll be successful and happy, and the money will come to you. Do what you love, and everything will be fine. And what really that's speaking to is the fact that if you're doing what you love, you never work a day in your life. I'm sure that's our listeners have heard that, and that's so true. If you engage in something that you love to do, that brings you deep personal satisfaction, it evokes love and happiness and kindness. It literally is like a foundation of it. And maybe this is the year for many people to get back to that. I know so many people that choose a profession based on how much they can make, and then they never love a day of work in their entire lives. They don't love it. They just do it because it allows them. It's sort of like the platform that they can use to spring off and do other things. What gets forgotten is the amount of your life you spend doing that thing you don't like. And then you wonder why there's a lot of dis-ease in the world, because people engage in stressful activities that are incongruent with their innate nature, and then as a result of it, experience in their lives many more lower frequencies, take them out of balance, and cause a lot of incongruence in their body that leads to disease. That it sparks other things. And I know I personally am very much into, and have been for decades, since I first became an entrepreneur and I got into things, and I noticed that I hit this wall of stress, and I started saying, why do I feel this way? What is it? What interpretation am I giving this that is allowing me to feel this way? And when I changed my perception of what I was involved in, it's like this. If you're in insurance sales have been given a bad rap. Okay, whether you're selling life insurance or health insurance or whatever the heck it is. A lot of people see that as somebody just trying to, sell you something that you could perhaps use 30, 40, 50 years down the line. And the profession has been given a bad rap. It's the way that you perceive, if you're in that business, it's the way you perceive what you are doing for people that determines how much satisfaction you get out of what you do. It is interesting. I heard of a gentleman who was in the financial services industry, and we had a conversation one day, and he said, "Yeah, I had an insurance license, and I had a client who had a property in Sonoma, and it had seven different. It was a property that had 7 different lots, and they'd had it for many, many years, and she wanted to be able to pass it on to her son without having to pay huge amounts of taxes. And there's this thing where you can buy an insurance policy that covers the taxes, right? And she did that. And the gentleman told me, he said, look, he says, one of the most gratifying things that has ever happened to me in the business that I'm in is that I got a call from the woman's attorney after she passed on. And the attorney was thanking me and so grateful that I had come to them and presented that, not me, but her, this gentleman had come to me and presented this opportunity. And that because she said, hey, it really made the estate transition so easy. They didn't have to sell the property. Now the son could live on the property. And I just loved that story. And that's how if you see yourself as somebody who is creating a continuity of happiness, a continuity of someone's life, because the son wasn't really interested in going off and finding a new place to live. That had been the property he'd grown up with his parents and the house and everything, and he wanted to keep it to live there until he passed on. So it's a function of with whatever we do, we have to make peace with it in a way that is congruent with our innate purpose in life. And if what we do is in line with our own innate gifts, if we're good with people and we're doing something that involves people, the connection with people, or if we're good with numbers and we're doing something that where we have so much fun working with numbers and then helping other people, being of service of other people with what we do, even though we may sit in an office and crunch numbers all day, we are performing a service where we're helping other people live with less stress. We're making life comfortable for them so that they can go off and do something else, that they want to do without having to worry or be concerned or fearful about what's going on. And so the bottom line of this is a year, in my view, based on what Pam's been saying, that we examine our choices, what we're doing, assessing what's irrelevant to us now, what no longer has any relevance to us, and we're shedding that, and we're taking greater control of our lives and moving forward. And that's going to contribute to the new earth. We know it all starts within us. We can't sit there and say, we're going to have a new earth and somebody else is going to create it. I'm going to keep doing this. Because all that negative energy that is so prevalent in the world right now, that's been exploding around the world, has got to have a new purpose. And maybe this is the year, according to hers. This could be the year that energy gets new purpose and takes us through the next cycle.
No, I love that. Absolutely. And I think, Michael, purpose is a really big word, and what does it mean to live your purpose? And I think it was good I said your work is to discover your work and then give all of your heart to that. And I find it so fascinating because really our life, we are a work in progress. I think a lot of us become impatient. We live in this society where everything has become instantaneous. I always blame it on Kinko's because, up until then, if you had something that you wanted to send before the fax machine came, you had to put it in an envelope and you mailed it, and people had to wait 3 or 4 days, and even getting a picture, you had to drop off your film. Even in 1 hour, you had to wait for that to be developed, right?
Absolutely.
We shorten our attention span, or the time that will allow for things to unfold. And really, I think we've done a disservice to ourselves. Nothing really happens instantly. Enlightenment doesn't happen instantly. Finding our path to what it is that we love doesn't happen instantly. We evolve it. And I think that's what's really important to understand, that and I think with the internet, we've talked about this before, people have, there's an illusion out there that everybody's got all their ducks in a row, and your life is just a shambles because you don't buy XYZ course. And it's not true. It's not true that everything, no matter what it is, even the little setbacks that you have, they're all part of your story. They're all part of what brought you to this point in time. And it's sort of like that treasure hunt. You enjoy treasure hunting. I enjoy treasure hunting. What is it that we want to uncover in our dreams? And we're not really always sure of the direction that we need to take, and that's okay. Oftentimes it's just when we sit back, take a few breaths, then all of a sudden the path presents itself. And it may be in a corner of the room that's dark and dusty that we never even thought to look at. We'll find a book that, somebody had given us 10 years ago that we never bothered to open, and maybe that book's the new earth for me. I joke about it, but maybe that's what it is. And we get, we get caught up in how is it going to be, but we don't really understand, I think, that there are so many possible paths. And what is your dream? And it may not just be one dream. And what is your vision going to look like? We've spoken about that. And it's all part of the process. And you have to allow yourself the grace to let it unfold. And I think that what Pam's saying when she talks about the new earth, she says, for the greatest good of all. And that's how we establish a frequency and a resonance for what the new earth will look like. And so, when you ask yourself, am I doing something with integrity? And that was another big word she used. And she said that will be a big theme for this year. And I love that because integrity is so important. And when you sort of define it and again, ask yourself, what does it mean when you hold yourself to the highest standard? And what would love do? And again, what would love do? And I just, there's so much that goes along with that. And I'd love to hear your thoughts about that, Michael.
Well, it's interesting because I agree with you 110% that, about integrity and what it means to each of us. We have to obviously make that decision. And something that came to mind when you were talking there, when you said, when you talked about people who make mistakes, and it becomes it is a part of who we are. The main beauty, the beauty of making mistakes, of having incongruencies, having misfortune and other things in your life, is that you have a choice in that moment to either believe and become and identify with that mistake, which in my view it's a lie that it is a failure. To me that's a lie that people live, and they become wrapped up in it, and they let it define them. They let it become part of their identity. The most important thing is to not identify yourself by your mistakes. It's to see yourself as an ever-evolving being, and that is just a grain of sand on the beach of your life. And it doesn't define who you are. It's interesting. I think you had told me about someone, I think it was a conversation with you, you told me about somebody who had stage 4 cancer and left and went to Europe. Was that you that told me that story?
No, I don't think so. No.
Okay, it's an interesting. I'm going to paraphrase this, kind of get it off quickly, but in a nutshell, what it was is that this gentleman who was married at the time to a wonderful young lady, was having cancer problems, and he thought that his life was. He was told that his life was going to be over in 6 months, and he quit his job, which was causing him an incredible amount of stress and strain and to experience a lot of lower frequencies. He left and went to Europe, started traveling around Europe with his wife. And that change of venue, that change of experience for him, he was identifying himself with the work and the stress and strain of the work. It wasn't really making him happy. He wasn't getting a lot of satisfaction out of it. And it led, in his view, to his problems physically. He left and went to Europe, and they all went away. All his problems went away because he changed, in his view, he started seeing life in a different way. Traveling around, meeting people, creating connections, seeing places that he longed to see for many, many years. And I know it's an oversimplification. However, it's a sort of a microcosm of what we all need to do. We need to examine in our lives those things that we are doing that are incongruent the balance and harmony that we should be developing in our lives, and a harmony between our inner world and outer world, and many other factors. But I thought it was a great story, and although it's somebody else's journey, we have something we can take from that, and that is that we have choices that we can make every single day. We do not have to stay within the confines of how we have identified ourselves for, throughout our lives. I know people who identify themselves wholly by their mistakes, and they're unable to get past that. They're unable to see beyond it. And I encourage them over and over again to take from those things what they can and let them go quickly. It's almost like having, every experience you have that has a seriously deep negative impression on your subconscious emotionally is like a ball and chain that you drag with you throughout life. And sooner or later, that weight gets to be way too heavy to move forward. You feel like you're stuck in mud, just treading, just stepping, but never going anywhere. And it becomes a heavy load, a heavy burden. And it maybe perhaps this year, it's time that the energies of the universe and the planetary and astrological harmony is lining up to make it easier to shed those balls and chains that you've been carrying, because they don't really identify. You can absolutely, in any given moment, create a new identity. I'm dovetailing this into something that I know I'm going to encourage you to put a link on the description of this show and podcast, because Brian Scott just did a beautiful piece about shifting your identity, changing your identity. I thought it was a very nice piece. I don't think I can do anything better. It's about a 50-minute video conversation he has. You can just listen to it, and he pretty goes through the soup to nuts of changing your identity, and then he reveals that he himself changed his identity, because his last name is not Scott. It's not Scott, but he changed his name to Scott because it was easier to remember. And in doing so, it gave him permission to shift his identity into the world that he is in right now. I mean, it's just one case. We can all do it, but I find that I gave the video to my girlfriend Sandy, and I said I sent this to you because 38 years ago, as I was getting into the business that I'm in, I actually did this. I actually had to shift my identity, what I identified with, and because I had to kick myself up a level in terms of what I was capable of, and our inner conversations happen to support our identity. It's one of the important factors. If we feel that we're only capable of earning a certain amount or experiencing life in a certain way, whether we're tied to a certain illness, if it becomes our identity, then that is the identity that plays out for us. That is what we attract to us. Those are the energies that we attract. It becomes your state of being, and we can step outside of our existing identity. And this is the year for many people, in my view, because of all the energies and how they're in the planetary situation and astrologically speaking, that the energies will be there to identify, to define your current identity, and then create a new one for yourself. And that new identity is then going to be part of the foundation of creating this new earth scenario with love and kindness and gratitude and empathy, forgiveness, all of that. I find it absolutely fantastic. You can do it on a small level. You can do it on a big level like he did by changing his name and moving forward. It's interesting because I find this is the kind of stuff that fascinates the heck out of me, that I can just roll around in my head for days and days and days, and thinking about how it applies, how I can apply it to my own life. because everybody's an individual. So everybody's story is not the same. Not everybody's going to go change their name. I like mine, quite frankly. I love yours.
I like yours too.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Why would Frankie Love change her name? Oh, she's perfect.
Oh no, absolutely not.
I mean,
sure.
It's really kind of cool. So the piece is beautiful. It opens your mind to how perhaps you might be living in identifying yourself based on like mistakes, past issues and problems, your family, all these things that you might be defining yourself by, and understanding that that's all something that you can completely and totally turn the page on. And you can bring new feelings in. You can allow new experiences in your life. You can change everything about yourself. And in doing so, and much of this is about about identifying yourself with positive traits, positive attributes, instead of the negative attributes that perhaps you might have been identifying yourself by. If you failed as a kid at something, somebody said something to you, the thought viruses that you've been carrying are in many ways identifying who you are. You're identifying who you are by those thought viruses, what somebody told you. Somebody told you were incapable of. Somebody you respected earlier in your life when you were more impressionable and you were looking to step out a little bit, and then someone says, no, you'll never be able to do that. And you're like, oh, then you believe them, then you step back, you retreat. And maybe this is a year to, instead of retreating, step out, step off the precipice and experience life in a whole new way. Identify yourself in a different way. Really rather interesting. And the whole idea of living in integrity, by the way, it's a large part of this. Part of it.
Yeah, it could actually be a whole show. Dr. Joe Dispenza wrote a book called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, and I love the title because he talks a lot about how when you get up in the morning, most people now, the first thing they reach for is their phone. And then they'll check their email, or they'll check their messages, or they'll check this, and then they get up and they go to the washroom and they do that, and they're sort of on autopilot. They're never really starting to create their day. And I think it's, for me anyway, just by changing one small habit, you can really start the trajectory of your day on a completely different path. And I wanted to just mention, though, Michael, because you brought up cancer. I don't know if you've ever seen the article about the man who almost forgot to die. He was a Greek gentleman. His name was Stamatis Moratis. A tongue twister, to be sure. But what's so interesting, in the 1970s, he was given a diagnosis of lung cancer, and they gave him 6 months to live, and he said, here's the chemo, here's the radiation, so what we can do for you. And he said, no, you know what, I'm not going to do any of that. He decided that, since the funerals in the U.S. were so expensive, he was going to go back to Greece and see his family and get his affairs in order. And before he knew it, he was working in the garden. He was visiting family, eating good food. And when the New York Times, the person who wrote the article about him, caught up with him, he was either 98 or 100, and he passed away in 2013. And he outlived most of the doctors that had given him the diagnosis in the 1970s.
Yeah.
But the point is, he lived. He got on with life. He didn't accept what they said. He figured, well, you know what, here, I may as well enjoy the time that I have. And that's one thing, we all have an end date. We don't know when that is. And so really being on this planet is about enjoying the things that bring us joy, really, truly, and the things that fill our hearts with love, and connecting with individuals with love on this planet. And I think it's awesome. So important, because there's so many different things that can step us up. And I worked in my holistic practice. I never advertised for people that were out of balance with cancer, but they always seemed to find me. And I look at the individuals that were given a timeline and where they are now. And the one woman, that's what I said to her. I said, you've gotten all of these things back into balance again. Now go live your life. Go on a vacation. Don't worry about if it will come back or might come back, whatever. And that's exactly what she's doing. And here she is 13 years past her diagnosis of 6 months and really living and enjoying life. And that's what it's all about. And I think that as we – go ahead, please.
No, please. As we what? Go ahead. As we move forward, I've got this thing running through my head that all these people have a common thread that you've just spoken about. The common thread is that they no longer identified with the person they were before, that the person that they were that created the problem, the disease that they actually had. I mean, literally, you have to. It goes to the break the habit of being yourself is about is about understanding that you have an identity right now that is backed up by behaviors. In other words, habits that you have. And what the single thread that goes through all these people is that they completely changed their lives. They stopped doing the things that led to their disease. They totally changed their lives. They began to identify with something different in their lives. And you have to. It's one of the things. It's otherwise you create this incongruency. You wish and you want to be doing something else or be living a different way. However, in your mind and your thoughts and behaviors are backing the thing the identity that you are looking to shed. There has to be a congruency there. You have to change your behaviors, change your habits, right? And there's another book, I forgot. It was something that it was actually a gentleman who we had on the show. We had on one of the radio shows with Glenn Brooks, and the book was called, I have to look it up on my computer, and I'm not next to it right now, but it's called The 4%. The gentleman and his wife wrote this book called The 4%. Because he had pancreatic cancer. He was given a diagnosis of pancreatic cancer. And part of the diagnosis, the doctor, during the diagnosis description, he said, doctor says only 4% of the people who have this type of cancer survive. And he said, okay, I'm the 4%. That's what he told him. I'm the 4%. And years later, he proved him right. He was the 4%. And because he literally shifted and changed the things that led to the behaviors, the thought patterns, and everything that his attitude that and state of being that created the situation that he found himself in. He totally shifted and changed it completely. Changed what he ate. He identified with different foods, different eating patterns, different ways of living. In terms of what he was doing for a living. Sometimes you have to do that. We don't understand that our identity and state of being created by that identity, the frequencies that we're resonating, are the reason for the problem. And we, as part of the diagnosis, as part of the solution to whatever you've been diagnosed with, you have to change that. There's an institute on the West Coast that people happen to go to, and there was a woman who was on our show that we had on, Glenn Brooks and I will tell you the name of the book if I can find it here in a second. I think I have it right here. It's called The Passionate. She wrote a book called Susan Landry. She wrote a book called The Passionate Vegetable. And by Susan Landry, it's The Fresh Food Chef, Passionate Vegetable. So basically it's a cookbook, a vegetable cookbook, a vegetarian cookbook of how to make really cool stuff, right? She was for this institute the person who was in charge of helping people shift their habits with regard to healthy eating, right? If you came to this institute with a diagnosis of cancer, and you had stage 3, stage 4, the first thing you want to do is examine what you've been identifying with regard to your eating habits. What are you eating?
Sure.
And she would look at them and say, this is the first thing you need to do is to completely eliminate sugar from your diet if you've got cancer, because cancer thrives on sugar, and other things. Change your and as well as your mindset towards yourself and towards your life and towards others. And there is a major benefit in your life to adopting love over anger, hate, judgment, and a lack of forgiveness, self-forgiveness, mainly, and a lack of empathy and compassion for yourself and others. And as I've told a good friend of mine, love, empathy, compassion, gratitude, forgiveness, these things have to become part of you, about who you are. That has to be the way that you decide to live your life and the way that you decide to engage with your outer world. That will change everything for you, because it changes your energies, and then you begin to attract like resonances in people with like resonances, and in situations and circumstances with like resonances into your life. You can look at somebody who's telling you, hey, I don't have any friends, I this or that, I'd like love in my life. Like I said, the first question I asked them is, so how do you feel about you? How do you feel about you? Because how you feel about you is that frequency of feeling towards yourself. Are you compassionate to yourself? Are you empathetic? Are you forgiving of yourself when you do things that, maybe just are incongruent with maybe who you are, that you've done things that made choices that haven't worked out well, that have led to perhaps other people's suffering pain, because you were intentional in your nature. You were you did it intentionally on the conscious level. I mean, all these things. Do you love yourself? Can you stand there in front of the mirror and say, I love you? Can you look yourself in the eye and say that every single morning? And if you can't look yourself in the mirror and say, I love you, and I love you deeply in every possible way and with infinity, hey, that's telling you something. It means that your past is very much a part of your existing identity. You're identifying with your mistakes. You're identifying with mishaps, misfortunes, thought viruses that have been fed to you, spoon-fed to you over years by people you respected. That is one of the main things that we must do if we're going to create this new earth. We have to love ourselves. We have to accept ourselves as we are today, and then envision a new self, a new identity for ourselves. Losing weight was one of the things that examples that Brian used, which I thought was brilliant, and one that I have always used myself. If I want to look differently, I have to examine how I'm identifying myself. Is my inner conversation such that I am saying you're fat, I don't like you, I don't like the way I look, I'll never be able to look differently? Is this your inner conversation? Or in order to change that, you have to see yourself differently, and then start talking about yourself differently, and then examine the behaviors that have gotten you to where you are, the habits. Do habits that are congruent with being the new you, and then be the new you. Don't look at yourself in the mirror and beat yourself up. Look at yourself in the mirror and say, I love you. I'm accepting of everything. I forgive you for whatever you've done in the past that's made you get to this particular point in time, that made you get to this weight. I forgive you for the people you've hung around with that have helped encourage these bad habits. I forgive you. I forgive myself. I can change. I can shift. I can say no to things. I can change my diet. I can fall in love with healthy eating and go out and do the research and just create a new person, create a new identity of who you are. It's a fascinating concept. Yes, we could do a whole show on it. However, as it ties to the new earth, everything begins inside of us, with us. We've got billions of people who are seeing themselves as separate beings when we all are tied together as one. And the one is so much more powerful than the individual. And we have to get to the point where we are thinking of ourselves as one, then start treating ourselves as all one, and quit with the divisiveness and the separation and all of that. Because when that happens, magically, it changes the consciousness of the planet. It does. It changes. You start attracting a different kind of person to you, one that resonates with the same things that you're actually creating within yourself. And it's not that you can't put the cart before the horse. You can't wish you were a different place if you're still doing the same things that led to where you are now. Not going to happen.
Right. I couldn't agree more. And Michael, as you were talking, it's so funny. You said put the cart before the horse, but I actually got a vision of a roller coaster. and that's one of the things I love about Pam, because she said, that the thing with astrology, the planets are going to do what they're going to do, and we have no control over it. We just have to surrender to their energies and the movement. So if you stand in line, like say you're the big amusement park and you really want to ride that ride, and you're standing in line and basically you're chatting up with everybody else, and then you get to the front of the line, and where are you going to sit on that roller coaster? And it's like it climbs and climbs and climbs, and all of a sudden you're at that precipice, and guess what? It's not going to stop for you if you change your mind. You're going to get off. It's going to go down, and there's going to be twists and turns, and sometimes if it's the kind that has a loop, it's got a loop, and but when you come out at the end, most people have a big smile on their face. Because guess what? Is the thrill and the adventure and everything else. And I think that's sort of what Pam is saying, that we're in this time that's a very unique space for humanity. We're moving away from all of the things that really were sort of hard, dense, materialistic, and moving into something that's lighter, faster, more community, more collaborative. It really has to do with our own unique purpose and then how we want to bring that together. But we all have a unique contribution. And I would say, Michael, and this is just from the time that I've spent with you, that one of your passions is for sharing, and you have a true desire to help other people. And that's it's a gift. It really is. And you share the wisdom. You might not have all the knowledge about any one topic. I don't, certainly. I have the things that I glean along the way. But then when you and I, it's a synergy. We collaborate, we share. And really that wisdom that we share is all about what we came here to do. And that's what I really love. And I think that it's, as you claim your calling, no matter what it is, if it's a book that you really feel compelled to write, sit down and write a couple of paragraphs or even a sentence. It doesn't have to be. You don't have to sit down and write the whole book in an hour. It's just not going to happen.
No.
Sometimes things flow like that.
Takes patience.
But it's
Takes
really,
patience.
Absolutely. And we have to really let go of the illusion of fear and really come from that space of love, because for me that's, the two cannot coexist. You cannot be emanating love and then be in fear. And I'm so grateful that you brought this up, because really being open and heart-centered and loving and welcoming all the possibilities in your life is what we came here to do, to create that new earth. And we, as so often, Michael, time goes by so quickly. So I'm going to close out the show. We have, well, not quite yet. We still have about 5 minutes, but I'd love for you to eloquently close out the show. Thank you.
Can't say I have 5 minutes worth of talking left to do, but I just want to say this: we have to re-examine what we feel we're capable of. That is one of the things that Pam was talking about. We have to, and Brian Scott was talking about it as well. We have put limitations on ourselves as far as what we can think, how we can feel, what we can do with our lives. And it's time to step outside of that framework. And in doing so, it will benefit us individually and everyone around us. And it will start to attract different people, different circumstances into our life. We have to get away from giving so much importance and relevance to the 3D world. We have to do that. This is, in the United States right now and around the world, politically, there's a lot of things going on that people are dedicating a lot of time and energy to, a lot of anger and fear and worry towards. And I've always said, people say, why don't you run for office? Because it doesn't resonate with me. The power and all of that that's not who I am. That is not my identity. Now, there are some people who have decided to step into it. Reverend Warnock, number one. I would love to have a conversation with him to find out how he balances that out. Because he does it, and he gives a church service every single Sunday. He flies to Atlanta and at the Ebenezer Baptist Church where Martin Luther King preached. And yet he goes back to Washington and he does his thing. And what we need are thousands of more people like that who can balance that out. I feel, as like you've said, yes, I came to an agreement with myself, a loving agreement that I am a persuasive personality. That is what I was born. I was born a persuasive. And I used to, many decades ago, I used to fight it. I used to say, no, that's not me. I used to see it as a bad thing, right? When I decided to change my way of thinking to being, as a persuasive, I have a gift where I'm able to introduce people to something different, to something that could help them. And I introduced it in a loving way. Not a, you should do this, you should do that, you don't do this, that's a bad thing, it's the good thing. Just basically say, I heard this thing. It's really cool. Pass on information that has relevance to them at that particular point in time based on their thinking, based on what they're telling you. And that I found is my gift. When there's something really, really good for people, then I have the ability to persuade them to think differently, or to accept it because it's good for them, to step outside of their comfort zone and do something different that will, in the end, benefit them to a great degree. And now I'm taking that I've been taking it to the podcast for, 20 years. And this podcast, same thing. You can convey information and share and help people discover and rediscover in a way that is not pointed, judgmental, unloving, and mainly not judgmental, because everybody is who they are based on their experiences from birth to now, what they've thought about themselves, what they thought themselves capable of, what they think, who they think they are right now, the identity they have for themselves, what they identify with in life. It's really interesting. It's a big subject. It's a lot to unpack. It's a conundrum to me. Sometimes it's just a big fat conundrum, because it's like this evolutionary circle, right? A cycle, I should say, where we have the ability to, when we think different, it causes this thing, and then that thing causes another thing, and before we know it, we're 180 degrees away from where we were, by, like you said at the beginning of the show, changing one thing. And I encourage people, when they listen to this podcast or listen to my Beyond My Life Moves podcast, to actually just change one little thing. My thing this year is sovereignty. And by the way, Pam mentioned it at least a dozen times. Sovereignty is a big take. Yeah, sovereignty is a big thing. Sovereignty is taking back control of your mind, your body, and your spirit, ruling over them yourself, overseeing them with love and kindness and gratitude. And empathy and compassion. People have literally outsourced their sovereignty to the 3D world. this is what has to change. And when it does change, and it changes in a big way, it will create huge changes in this earthly plane, and that people will just be blown away by. But that's what has to happen. The weight has gone way too far. The scale's tipped way too far to people giving up their sovereignty, to outsourcing it, which is outsourcing your feelings and what you're thinking to outside influences. Conspiracy theories maybe, or this or that, what you think is this, what somebody else thinks is true. You need to decide for yourself, reason yourself, and take control of what you're ingesting. Take control of what you're eating. 30 years ago, I decided no more fast food, no more soft drinks, no more, because I thought, what do I want to look like and feel like when I'm 60? And I did this when I was 30. And I'm 64 now. So grateful that I made the decision to stay off of massive amounts of sugar and salt and fat, trans fats, or all those things that they now think are bad. Back then, everybody was doing it. And I had this instinctive notion to just say, I'm giving that up. I can do without it. And I'm so grateful because today I'm so healthy. I am. I'm very healthy. I just came from the eye doctor yesterday. Hey, your eyes are perfect. At 64, I can eat a little bit of a quarter to a half or 3/4 off in one eye. Not a big deal. But we have to think about the decisions and choices we make today are going to determine how we look and feel about ourselves and how our lives are in 20 years, 30 years, depending on your age, 40 years.
Absolutely.
And we have to give that some thought. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, and I just want to mention one last closing thought is Pam's mantra for 2023. I'm welcoming in an expanded consciousness of love. And if you say that over and over again, I'm welcoming an expanded consciousness of love, you can't go wrong. So thank you, Michael, and thank you to all our listeners.
Thank you.
And so it is.